Okay, today we're going to look at Lesson 11, which is comparing ratios using ratio tables. So we'll be given two ratio tables with some with not similar numbers in it, and we'll have to figure out how we can compare information. So example 1 says the production of two pizza restaurants were compared. Here are the results of a Saturday night of pizza production for each restaurant. So we'll see here we have Sal's Pizzeria, and in the table we have hours it took, and then number of pizzas made. We also have Rusty's Pizza. The table is set up the same exact way. If you notice, in Sal's Pizzeria, the hours are counting 2, 5, 6, 10, so they're not consistent. It kind of jumps around, so just be careful with that. And then in Rusty's Pizza, it's 3, 6, 9, 12. So there are different things that we're counting by in each of the tables. And if you notice, there is one similar number, the 6 hours, where we could be comparing information. But we're going to see what you can do if there were not any common numbers. So we'll look at it with that 6 hours in both tables, and then what would happen if we didn't have the same number in each table. So the first question is asking us which pizza restaurant makes the most per hour. So they want to know how much for 1 hour. So what we can do here is we can take any ratio from either of the table and we can scale it down to 1 hour. And here's what I mean by scale it down. So if I look at my first ratio here, I have 2 hours. There's 16 pizzas. So I can take my 2 hours for 16 pizzas. And what I'm going to do is set it up equal to another fraction with hours over pizza. Remember, you want to label your equal fractions. Hours should be across from hours. Pizza should be across from pizza. If we're looking at per hour, that word per means for 1. So we're looking to see how much for 1 hour. So next to hours, I would put 1. We're going to scale the ratio down to 1. So we're going to do 2 divided by 2 to get that 1, and 16 divided by 2 tells us 8. So it's 8 pizzas per hour. And we can write the word per, or we can use this / to show per. So again, scaling down is just taking a ratio and using division to bring the numbers in the ratio lower. So we can do the same for Rusty's Pizza. Again, we can choose any one of these ratios in the table. I'm just going to start with that top one again. So this one is 3 hours for 21 pizzas. Set up my equal fraction with hours over pizza. We want to go down to 1 hour because that's where we'll be able to compare them at that 1 hour. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so 21 divided by 3 is 7. That means that Rusty's can do 7 pizzas per hour. So you really, when you're comparing two things, have to think about what it's asking you. So if we want the most pizzas per hour, we would want the larger number of pizzas in 1 hour. Sometimes you're really going to have to read into what this is meaning. We have a lot of problems where it's talking about who's faster, and it really, you have to look at what the units are saying. So be careful when we see problems like that. So the person who is faster, or the restaurant that's faster, would be Sal's, because 8 pizzas in 1 hour is more than 7 pizzas in 1 hour for Rusty's. So we would say Sal's. Then it asks, how many hours will it take at this rate for Sal's to make 120 pizzas? If we look at Sal's Pizzeria's table, 120 is not there. Since it doesn't count consistently either, I can't just continue my table. So this is where I can use my equal fractions again, and I'm going to use it with that value, the 1/8 value. So it was 1 hour is 8 pizzas. We're trying to figure out how much it is for 120 pizzas. So again, to figure out what we're multiplying by, if you're not sure, which I'm not 100% sure looking at this, I would do 120 divided by 8. And I'm going to do my fun math tools calculator over here. And I'm going to do 120 divided by 8, which is 15. So what that means is 8 times 15 is 120. So 1 times 15, it takes 15 hours for those 120 pizzas. The next thing asks, how many pizzas will Rusty's be able to make in 15 hours? So once again, I can use my value of 1 hour, 7 pizzas for Rusty's, set it up equal to another fraction with hours over pizzas. This time we're looking at the number of hours being 15, so next to hours I would put 15. I know 1 times 15 is 15, so I would do 7 times 15 to get 105 pizzas. And again, this goes along with that whole Sal's can make more pizzas. If we look, they're both at 15 hours. 120 is more than 105. So that still rings true even when we scale up using multiplication to higher amounts of time. Okay. So now the next problem is very similar, except these are the results of a Monday night of pizza production for each restaurant. And once again, they're asking us to, they're now asking us to find the value of each table. So again, to find the value, you would just take each ratio, or any ratio from the table. We'll just start with the 6 hours, 21 pizzas. And we're going to put that in simplest form. So remember that a value is a fraction in simplest form. If they were asking us which ratio the table is built off of, we could write it with a colon or a fraction or the word 2, but because they are asking for a value, we need it as a fraction in simplest form. So both of these can be divided by 3, which gets me 2/7 as my value for Sal's Pizzeria. For Rusty's, 8 hours over 18 pizzas, scale that down. They can both be divided by 2, which gets me 4/9. Now notice what's interesting here is that our values are not talking about how much it is for 1. That's pretty much the values we've seen so far. So this is where it becomes a little bit different. These values do not have a 1 in them. So when it asks us who made pizzas faster on a Monday night, we can use information from the table because they do have a similar number. But I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can do it if there is not a similar number. So one way we could look at it, like I said to begin with, is they both have a number for 24 hours. If I compare at the 24, I see in 24 hours, Sal's can make 84 pizzas, and in 24 hours, Rusty's only makes 54 pizzas. So here we can see Sal's makes more. 84 is greater than the 54. But let's say we didn't have that 24 in the table, or we didn't have a common number in the table. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. One way is to take your two values, the 2/7 and the 4/9. You can take them and you can find a common denominator for them. So what I would do for a common denominator is 9 times 7. Turn them both into 63rds and then compare them at 63. So that's one way you can do it. Another way that you can do it is to scale them down to 1 and compare them that way. So for example, I'm going to just flip them though to make the numbers a little easier. So I would do 7 for 2 and 9 for 4. Okay, so this time the 7 is corresponding to the pizzas. The 2 is corresponding to the hours, so pizzas over hours, I just flip-flop them, and then I would scale it down to 1 hour. Okay, so you can always use that idea of scaling down to 1, even if it does give you a decimal. So, for example, with Sal's, 7 divided by 2 is going to tell me 3.5 pizzas, or 3.5 pizzas. And 9 divided by 4 is going to give me 2 1/4 or 2.25 pizzas. So then I would still see 3 1/2 is bigger than 2 1/4. So Sal's is still faster. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different ways you can compare. Look for a common number in the two tables. Make a common denominator of the two tables. We could have even flip-flopped these and used fourths, or scale it down to 1. I'm going to say one that we use the most often would be the scaling it down to 1. Okay, so now if we look at how many hours it will take at this rate for Sal's to make 210 pizzas, we can go up and use Sal's value. So we have 2 hours, 7 pizzas. And again, it really does not matter if we have the pizzas on top or the hours on top, as long as whatever is across from it is the same. So here I flip-flop those numbers. It really doesn't matter as long as hours are across from hours and pizzas are across from pizzas. We are looking at 210 pizzas. So next to the P for pizzas, I'll put 210. I would then do 210 divided by 7, which hopefully we can see 7 goes into 21 3 times and attach the 0. So 7 times 30, and then 2 times 30 to get 60 hours. Okay, and then the last one says, how many pizzas will Rusty's be able to make in 48 hours? So again, we're just going to go back and use our value, 4/9. That was 4 hours for 9 pizzas. And we want to do hours, pizza. Again, it doesn't matter if I put the 9 on top or the 4 on top, as long as whatever is across from it is the same label. So now I'm looking at 48 hours. Next to hours, I'll put 48. 4 times 12 is 48. So 9 times 12 will get me my answer of 108 pizzas. Okay, so important pieces to know here is you can always scale down to 1. You can use your values to help you answer, as we've already seen in previous lessons. And we just want to make sure that when we're using equal fractions, that we are labeling our numbers on either side of our equal fractions. Okay, so you guys have some practice problems to work on. Go ahead and get started.